And PRSA brings in the senior executives who oversee the Bateman competition. And anywhere from 50 to 70 schools or more compete to create the best entry and to win this campaign. Think about that. Like it was 84 schools 2 years ago. And guess what? DePaul won. We won the whole friggin' thing. Of course, I didn't teach it, so I can't take any credit for it. But recently retired Jim Motzer was the king. But I mean, that was a feather in our cap. It's big time because everybody who's got any involvement in PRSA, PRSSA, or people out there who are in the real world know about Bateman. They know what it is. They know that it's a challenge, but it has tremendous advantages. So I'll tell you a little bit about it and what some of the upcoming things are that you need to do, and then we'll get right to what our teams did this year, which I still think was worth an award, but that's just me. You learn the strategic PR planning process in developing and executing a PR campaign, soup to nuts, everything from planning through execution and even budget, which is just not done in any other class at DePaul or any other school. Now, it is a 2-quarter class. When you sign up for the fall, you also have to be ready to sign up for the winter. The fall is Prad 386. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays on the Loop campus in the afternoon. It requires instructor permission. The explanation of this is in Campus Connect when you go to sign up. We can take up to 12 students. 2 teams up to 6 people each can compete, no fewer than 4. And we lost a couple of people last year, so we only had 4 people on each team. So we were down to the bare minimum. But what you do is you email dbethard@depaul.edu, and you send a note about your interest and why you would be a good candidate. You include your resume, make sure your GPA is on there or in the cover email or letter, and your DePaul ID. And the deadline for sign up is June 1. Next slide. So in the fall, what you do is you conduct research. That's basically the biggest part of a PR campaign. It's growing in importance every year. I bring in one of the 2 or 3 senior people from Golan, and he shows our new business campaign every year. And this year there was more research and strategy in the upfront than I ever saw before, because he says that's how we're getting hired these days. So you'll understand the PR planning and the writing process. The adjunct professor, Deborah Bethard-Kaplik, longtime adjunct at DePaul and I think 1 or 2 other schools. She used to run PRSSA's suburban Chicago operation, and she's also a former Bateman judge for PRSSA, and that's a pretty prestigious thing as well. Now, there are prereqs for this class, which are basically the prereqs you've mostly all taken. 255 intro, 256 writing, 291 research, and 292. Now, if you haven't taken 291, 292 yet, you can take it in the fall concurrently with taking Bateman, okay? But you have to have those all in before you sign up for the winter quarter, because Bateman counts for PR campaigns, and those are the prereqs for that. Now, in the winter, what do? We come back from the holidays and right after Christmas, and we go into the finale of the planning, and we execute the campaign. And usually from the month of early February to early March, it's usually a 30-day period, we execute our campaign. And that's what's different about Bateman than PR campaigns, which I teach, or really just about anything else except AAF, which is our counterpart course in advertising. The results are submitted over spring break. We were rewriting those all the way up through the week of spring break. The PR judges, we get like between 5 and 10 judges for every school. They're industry leaders like our own Ron Culp. Ron judges it just about every year. He runs our graduate program, and he is the preeminent public relations person in Chicago. So this counts as a prereq for PR campaigns. So you don't need to also take PR campaigns, although I know most of you, and I hope you'll take that with me sometime next year at the same time. So what are the advantages? Why do you want to sign up for Bateman? Well, the national competition sets a high bar for performance. All the best PR schools enter, and most of the people who are going to be hiring you someday will have taken Bateman when they were in school because they were high achievers, and high achievers take Bateman. You know, it's the ultimate team experience. You're working in a team of 4 or 5 or 6 students for 2 quarters. So imagine the teamwork that's required from that and the learning experiences you get from really being down in the trenches. But the advantage is huge because when you get out in the real world, you will work in teams more often than you will work individually. And that's what makes this such a great experience, because it really prepares you for the real world. You have the ability to continually evaluate and improve your work, which is also a skill you'll need in your careers. And executing it can be great fun, especially when it's on campus, because I've seen it being executed on campus over the years, and it really is a lot of fun. Now, this year, of course, was totally different. It was a 180, and they're going to show you what they did in just a second. And I'll say, although we didn't win, I've already recommended one student who subsequently got hired for a major PR Chicago agency in the Chicago office. And when I recommended her, I talked about one of her experiences in Bateman and everything she had to overcome to get this cooperating organization to agree to participate with us. I mean, at one point I said, give it up. We're just not going to do it. They just won't cooperate. They just won't help us enough. And you know what? She just stuck to it, and she made it happen. And it was a phenomenal experience. It was, of the 6 campaigns we executed, it was my personal favorite. And that was all because of one of our students who just learned and stuck to it and just wouldn't give up. And to me, that's what makes being a professor at DePaul such an honor and award, is that we have such great students. And the 8 students I had this past year, I will remember forever, even though we didn't win. All right. Can you tell I'm competitive? Oh, and by the way, I'll teach the class in the winter because I'm an execution guy, and we'll win this year, guys. Okay, I promise. All right, I'm done. Now let's look at what teams 1 and teams 2 did, and this will go very quickly. But thank you all for coming today. We appreciate it.
Hey, Niffer, is it okay if we go first? I have to run to work right after this.
Oh, yeah, of course. Let me skip ahead. There we go.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Kara. And then my teammate was Kate. It was us 2 with 2 other people, Dana and Julia. And our campaign was Talk Civil to Me. So like Don said, Bateman, it's a national competition held each year by PRSSA. And the coolest thing is that it really aims to engage community and just really make a difference within them. So yeah, our team was 4 people. Me and Julia did research and implementation. Kate was the creative director, and Dana was our account manager. So this year, go back really quickly, thanks. PRSSA provided us a brief, and then the goal was to implement a comprehensive public relations campaign that empowers universities, institutions, and local communities to actively improve the quality, integrity, and inclusivity of civility in public discourse. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Kara kind of already touched on this, but the topic was basically trying to solve the issue of incivility in our communities and in society. I'm sure Niffer will talk more about this too, but it was a pretty difficult topic to start out with just because it's so abstract and has such a broad range of areas you could kind of delve into. So obviously with a topic like this, the best place to start is with research. So the first thing that our group did was we created a DePaul community survey that we put out, and it was a lot of general questions, but also some open-ended questions asking people specifically about their interactions with other people, where they had encountered incivility in their lives, how often they encountered incivility, if they saw it on DePaul's campus, in their work lives, personal lives, tons of questions like that. So we ended up with 173 responses, which was awesome. A lot of that is because of us sending it to, other group projects we were working on, putting it out on social media, basically just trying to get it out as much as possible to different people at the DePaul community. But the most popular definition of civility, according to our survey results, was that 76% of people said that civility is behaviors that help to preserve the norms for mutual respect. There were a lot of mixed responses on like how comfortable or uncomfortable people felt calling other people out. A lot of people who took the survey didn't necessarily feel comfortable confronting other people or handling tough situations. So that was another thing that we wanted to focus on as we began creating our campaign. But by the end of it, we found that 64% of people had witnessed at least one example of uncivil behavior in a DePaul environment.
So while secondary research was definitely a part of our campaign as well, was really more informative, our primary research is really what we found to be, the most insightful. So in conducting our interviews and our focus groups, one insight that really stuck out to us was that civility is something that we need to relearn and therefore redefine as well. We found that there was a ton of conflicting ideas and attitudes about like really the language surrounding civility and kind of its connotations. So we really wanted to focus on bringing that to the forefront. They did not see civility as just a form of politeness or even like a synonym for politeness. Instead, they saw it more as a service and something that we need to work on and actively participate in. And then social media was obviously a big part of our campaign as well. So the incivility we see on social media, it typically stems from a lack of understanding and respect. And then finally, civility is both a combination of fact and then opinion and emotion.
Come back, Kate, your mic's on.
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't even realize. Okay, so this is kind of the primary idea that we wanted our campaign to center around. We wanted to use the phrase educate, engage, and empower. A lot of our campaign was surrounding these words, and we really wanted to kind of, nail that in so that people got that, our viewers got the idea that those are the three things, those were our three goals that we were trying to accomplish. So our goal was to educate the DePaul community on diversity, equity, and inclusion, improve community engagement to build mutual empathy and respect, and empower people to share their experience and actively promote and practice civility and public discourse. So everything that we did from social media to the events that we planned was all centered around this big idea.
So for our implementation phase of our campaign, it lasted from the beginning of February to the beginning of March. So we had a month for our execution phase. We held 3 main events that really aimed to focus on educating, engaging, and empowering not just the DePaul community, but Chicagoland professionals as well. Civility is something, that we should not just consider like in the classroom. It's something that goes beyond that, when we move on to become professionals in our careers. So we wanted to include Chicagoland professionals as another audience. And we also thought that it was important to execute these events as if they were going to be held on a national scale. So we focused not only on our audience, but our potential reach as well. So our first event was held with the DePaul Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, and it was called How to Be an Anti-Racist. It was a 2-part seminar for the DePaul community, and we worked with the office's director, Jose Perales, to host the seminar that aimed to shed light on one of the most important topics in today's society, which is racism. So it was based on the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. So we wanted it to not only be educational, but be discussion-based as well. So that was kind of the second part of the seminar. We got really great feedback. It was a great event and had really good and productive conversation. And then our next event was called Civility Time. So we partnered with DePaul's Delta Gamma chapter for a discussion held over tea to provide examples of how to deal with incivility and how to seek justice in the form of positive public discourse. So this audience, we wanted to focus on someone that may not necessarily have had these initiatives in their curriculum as much, and one that we could also replicate nationally. So, the DG members said that they wanted a lot more of this content and discussion surrounding these topics in their curriculum. So we shaped it around that, and that was another great, successful event. And then the last event, how do we see incivility in our personal and professional lives? This one definitely, I think, elevated our campaign a lot. It was in partnership with the Chicago Loop Alliance. So we hosted a panel discussion exploring where incivility stems from at its root. So it was a panel with Camelia Williamson, who's the director of the Center for Civic Learning and Community Action at Adler University, and then Chicago Loop Alliance board members, Richard Gamble and Laverne Morris. So these three panelists, they utilized the space to discuss how they saw incivility in their lives from their perspectives in light of their personal and professional experiences as people of color. So it was a great panel, great discussion. We had a great turnout, fantastic conversation. And this is something else that, Richard and Laverne have been talking about, doing in the future with the Chicago Loop Alliance. So it was something, a good starting point and a great event. And then, like Kate said, some of our other execution tactics were, social media was a huge part. We had Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We communicated a lot with our audiences over there. That's how we got our information out. And that's how we kind of interacted with our audience as well. And then Kate and I were on Radio DePaul talking about our campaign. What else? I think that was it. There's some, I don't know, right? Yeah. We wrote for her campus. We wrote some articles. So yeah, we did all that. And then the last big part of our campaign was our civility pledge. So at all of our events and on social media, we promoted the pledge. We collected just under 70 signatures to encourage our community to listen, learn, and act. And that was a great way to end our campaign as well.
Cool. Kara, if you want to hop off since you have to go to work, you totally can. Since I'm pretty sure this is our last slide. I can kind of take it from here if you need to head out. But
thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Bye, Kara.
Bye. So as I wrap up the conversation about our campaign, I do want to talk a little bit also about like why we chose those events. So as I was saying, and as Kara was saying, the topic was primarily civility and how to promote positive public discourse, but we wanted to create events that were not only interesting and would be exciting enough that people would want to come to them, but that were also informative and actually helpful. We didn't want it to just be some bland thing like, I don't know. A lot of the articles that were sent to us, we were kind of like, this seems interesting, but I think we can delve a little bit deeper. So that's kind of how we came up with those events. And also we wanted to reach all of our audiences. As we were implementing our campaign, we figured that the best campaigns would probably touch local communities, but also on a greater scale, touch the broader community, which in our case is Chicago. So that's why we chose to do 2 events on campus with DePaul, but also an event outside of DePaul. The Chicago Loop Alliance is it's basically, oh my God, now I forget what it's called.
It's the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, Chamber of Commerce for downtown Chicago. Thank you, Don. But it's basically downtown Chicago's Chamber of Commerce, which is why we chose to work with them. They do a lot of events in Chicago, so it just kind of turned out to be the perfect online event. It was definitely a struggle to try and get numbers up with everything being online. Hopefully next year will be a little bit better for doing stuff in person, but we did manage to actually beat all of our goals, which was really cool. We counted all of our interactions over social media and we educated over 20,000 people. We also partnered with Chicago Loop Alliance, and they were posting about the event that we had with them as well, which was awesome. We engaged 150 students, faculty, and staff from DePaul, almost 50 Chicago area professionals over the course of our 3 different events. And yeah, like Kara said, we had almost 70 people sign up for our pledge, which we chose to do as well because it's a bit more of a tangible, actionable thing that we could present to PRSSA. Instead of just saying, oh, this many people showed up to our event, we could also say this many people showed up and this many people said that they would pledge themselves to being more civil people in the future. So that's kind of why we chose to do those things. But yeah, even though we didn't win, I've been interviewing at different companies, and every time that they ask a question, I can almost always answer with an experience I had at Bateman, because a lot of the questions for future employers are going to ask are going to be about, your career and like what your experience is, if you can speak on certain projects or issues you've had to work on. And Bateman's a really great way to give examples for those kinds of questions. So yeah, sorry, I've been talking a lot, but I will send it over to you, Niffer.
And way to go, Kate. Hooray. Good job. And Kara, who went back to work. And Niffer, you're on.
All right. Sorry, I had to get my mic unmuted. But yeah, I'm here representing the awkward team today. It was me, Jennifer Honeycutt, Sabrina Fitch-Minton, Princess Gonzalez, and Rebecca Veselinovich, who were on the team. This is our team logo, the 2 fingers pointing at one another. We had 2 key audiences. Our primary audience was DePaul University community, and then our secondary was Chicagoans. These kind of got blended together, as happens with like digital events, because when it's open to everybody, like your audiences tend to get a little bit more muddled, but this was our intention kind of going into the project. So in quarter 1, we had research and insights. We had 1 online survey with 150 responses. We had 3 focus groups with a total of 10 participants. We did 20 in-depth interviews, and then we also did social listening using BrandWatch. And here are just a couple of graphics that we pulled from the different research that we did. So on the bottom, that is the social media sentiment related to the term civility. It was really fun using BrandWatch during this quarter, and like pretty much over this last year, because you could really see how like different events would like change. It would change social sentiment over time for a lot of these terms, if it related to like any like Black Lives Matter activity, any police brutality issue that came up, and certainly like all of the election stuff, you could really kind of track those events along with sentiment. And then in our survey, we asked people just sort of like how important is civility, and kind of got a gauge for that. We wanted to see how that changed over different ethnic groups, especially considering sort of like all the social unrest over the summer. And so we really wanted to like break down, who is this issue most important to, who are we missing with this information, and try and target our campaign in that direction. We have some key insights that we pulled from all of our research. One is that one-on-one conversations in intimate settings led to the best and most honest conversations. This was stated in many of our interviews, and it really guided the direction that we took the campaign. And sort of a sub key insight to that is that during the pandemic, opportunities for those conversations became fewer. So obviously, like, none of us are in person, none of us are talking to each other in person. So this was really an area that we wanted to drive into. And then our second key insight was that research participants who identified as belonging to a marginalized community expressed a desire for members of dominant communities to recognize their privilege, rethink their habits, and advocate for the underrepresented. It's a lot of words to basically just say we really wanted to highlight the fact that there are differences in the ways that different communities communicate all of these issues, and that we wanted to kind of bridge that gap between different communication styles and needs. And then in quarter 2, we had implementation. So using all of our research insights, we created a theme, which was tackling discomfort, a step towards civility. So that idea of discomfort really was sort of the through line to everything that we did, as far as all of our marketing, all of our writing, all of our event planning. And we really wanted to highlight that, like, these conversations are difficult for everyone, but it doesn't mean that we should avoid having them. That it really is important that we all participate in the conversation. And it also informed our name change from the copyright protected, we found out, Justice League to the Awkward Team, which we think was a move in the right direction, even though it wasn't our initial plan. We also chose orange and blue very specifically because we felt like blue represented DePaul really well, but then orange is kind of this like awkward, like what does it go with? It's kind of like an oddball color, so we wanted that to represent that. And then the two fingers going together, sort of like that awkward face emoji. So we wanted to sort of like pull on that. And then also, we don't have physical touch right now because of the pandemic. So sort of acknowledging that as well. And then here are our events. So there over on the right, you can see our timeline. Just a few key events that we did. On February 25th, we did a Zoom event with Bob Feldman, who founded the Dialogue Project. And he gave us some tips for having civil conversations. And then sort of using that key insight about having one-on-one conversations, we broke out into 2 or 3 person chat rooms. And so we would have 2 people just talking to each other with a prompt. It was usually something that was like uncomfortable or that was difficult to talk about. So like issues of like police brutality or how we're dealing with the pandemic, anything along those lines. And then we also had some like lighter events. It was a 2-event series called Brunch with the Bateman Bunch. And this was a really laid back opportunity to get together. We had like a speaker. We had Brett Taylor, one of the professors from DePaul, to come in and just sort of talk about civility. People could like express their own opinions. And we also did a giveaway with each one of those that were themed around the topic. You can see we did a home coffee kit for the one on February 23rd. And then we had our final submission, which was a 13-page document chronicling our entire experience over the 2-quarter course. This took a lot of work, but it was really fun. There's a lot of graphic design stuff involved. Like when you think about Bateman, you don't think about how artistic a lot of this stuff is. So it's really an opportunity to work with like graphic design, work with photos, work with like really laying out these documents in a cool way. Something that I forgot to put in here was our actual numbers. So it was sort of addressed in the last presentation, but it was definitely hard to get numbers at these events because people are just Zoom fatigued out. So we got a fair number. We got I think our highest was 35 that we got to come to one of the events, but they were really valuable. We got a lot of good feedback from them that we used in our document. So we really took a quality over quantity approach when we were sort of reporting all of our information. And then we were able to drive our numbers up by writing a blog for, so Ron Culp has a blog called Culprit, and we wrote a blog for him. It was about our Bob Feldman event, and that got about 1,000 views. So we were allowed to use that as part of our numbers. So that's all that I have for the Awkward Team.
Okay, I don't have a link. Do you want to come out, Jennifer? We'll just come back to live. But you can sign up for it, and you sign up for it like you sign up for other classes. No, Maria?
No, hello. So I'm Maria de Moyan, the Chair of Public Relations and Advertising. I used to teach Bateman, and Bateman needs, you need to be admitted to the course.
Well,
It
yeah.
is a competitive course. So our faculty has to select you to be admitted. So I don't know, I'm sure that Don talked to you already about Deborah, who's going to teach the first half, but because Deborah is not a full-time faculty member, I will be helping with the application process. And I was wondering if the form is out there, and I will look for it. But since I'm already talking and interrupting you, I was creating a list of what our alumni, our Bateman alumni are doing. And I cannot tell you enough how many of our alumni have leveraged Bateman into work. You're doing full campaigns that people are not going to be doing until 5 years or more out of school. So if you are wondering if Bateman is going to be useful, it's going to be extremely useful. If you're wondering if it's going to be tough, it's going to be very tough, but totally worth it.
Yes, and I'll add that we've already had one student who just got hired by a major PR Chicago agency as a result of her work on the campaign, among other things. So thank you all. Juliet, any closing comments? I think we covered the basics of what they have to do in order to get considered to be admitted. I'll help Maria as she requests, and knowing several of the people whose faces I see here, I'm certainly going to be recommending them. And if any of you who know me want to talk one-on-one further about this, feel free to do so. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and we're recording this and we'll post this on the PRSSA YouTube channel. So if you know of a friend who couldn't make it and would like to know more, they'll be able to see this video hopefully by tomorrow or the next day. We'll see. We have to go through a few steps. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay, well, I guess then, yeah, go ahead, Don.
Christina has a question.
I was just giving a thumbs up, but I guess I do have something I could ask. When should we be looking out for the forms to start applying for the class or submitting what we need to submit for the class?
Do me a big favor. I am literally editing it right now because sadly I am the queen of last minute. So if everybody throws this better not be part of the recording. If everybody throws your email in the chat, I will make sure that you get it in an hour or so. Thank you so much.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and I see 6 familiar faces here that I would love to see in Bateman next winter. So thank you all for coming tonight.